how we need to develop a web application, by why web application is required, and what are the different ways of developing a web application. We'll be discussing them. First of all, what is a web application and how we are going to use a web application. Let's consider like we take a simple website, Google or Gmail. When we type some content in Google, like Facebook, so it will give you all the matches that are there with Facebook. So how Google could able to give that response to us? When we type Facebook in the Google search, then it will give all the websites that are matching with the content that we have typed Facebook. So how Google is sending a response to us? And if you go to Gmail, you give the username and password. When we give the username and password, click on submit, then our mails will be displayed. We can perform some actions. We can compose a mail, we can draft a mail, we can delete a mail, we can perform many actions. How those actions are being performed? Okay, means internally they are using some kind of web applications. Okay, let's consider like there is a software like Edit Plus or Eclipse or Word. Okay, then let's consider like Word is there. In my machine I have installed Word, and can I access a Word installed in my machine from some remote machine which is there in US?
No.
No, we cannot access that. But in the same way, this Gmail or Facebook or Google is also a application. But we could be able to access those applications which are there, which are located in some server in US or Mumbai. But we could able to access them. How we could able to access the applications that are there in some servers in Mumbai or some servers in there in US, but why we could not able to access Word or Edit Plus or Eclipse that we have installed in our machine in some other machines. What is the difference means? This Edit Plus or Eclipse or Word or PowerPoint that we have installed, these are standalone applications. We call them as stand alone. They can only stand alone. Okay? They cannot be shared through some internet. Okay, some kind of network media like internet. So that we call those applications as standalone application. Best example for standalone applications that we have are Edit Plus, Eclipse, or PowerPoint that we have. These are standalone applications. But web applications are the applications that we can make them to interact, or we can make uh, we can interact with web applications from our browser through a media. Okay, that media is the internet. Okay, web applications are applications, okay, which can be interacted over internet. Okay, that's the main purpose where why we develop web applications. Okay, and each and every web application, in order to develop a web application, what should we have in order to develop a web application? Okay, what are the technologies that we use? Okay, that we are going to discuss. Okay. In order to develop a web application, basically we should have a server. The first thing that we need to develop a web application is we should have a server. Okay, we have different types of servers like web server and application server. Okay. Web server is a server where we can deploy a web application. Web server is a server where we can deploy a web application. Application server is a server where we can deploy a web application as well as enterprise application. Application server is a server where we can deploy both web applications as well as enterprise applications. Enterprise applications are the applications which involve enterprise objects. Enterprise applications are the applications which involve enterprise objects. Sorry. Such as EJB and all. Okay. Enterprise applications are the applications which will involve, okay, the enterprise objects like EJB and all. Okay. And as we told that web applications can be deployed both in web servers as well as application servers, but enterprise applications can be deployed only in enterprise servers. Okay. Or we can call this enterprise servers as even application servers. Okay. There are many web servers as well as there are many application servers available in the market, but the most used web server is Tomcat, and the latest version of Tomcat is 7.x. X is something like subversion. Okay. And there are several application servers available in the market. We have JBoss, WebLogic, WebSphere. Like this, there are several application servers available in the market. Okay, not even JBoss, WebLogic, and WebSphere. There are several tens and hundreds of application servers and tens and hundreds of web servers also available. But the mostly used web server is Tomcat, and the mostly used application servers are JBoss, WebLogic, and WebSphere. We'll discuss about application servers later on when it is required. We will have in-depth knowledge how to manage application servers, but for a basic web application, we'll discuss them in the web server. Okay. This Tomcat server is available in two forms. It will be in the exe file, a setup file, as well as we can download direct folder itself. Okay. Just it will be a directory structure, not a folder. Tomcat server is available in two formats. Okay. In the form of a exe file, it will be like a setup file, like we install Java. Okay. In the same way, there will be some exe file available where we go next, and next. We'll specify the location of installation and all. It's a exe file, and from 5.x onwards, the Tomcat developers has exposed a directory structure where we can download the directory structure and directly paste in some of the drives of our operating system, and directly we can use. We need not to have a exe file then. Okay, most of the people will be using this directory structure itself. So we need not to explicitly install that using a exe file. Most of them directly will use the directory structure itself. Okay, from where we can get this Tomcat server means just Tomcat server is developed by Apache Open Source Foundation. How this open source foundations will work means some larger companies, okay, will give funds or donations to some enthusiastic developers, okay, who will work together and develop some software so that the softwares can be used by those companies as well as the remaining companies who develop softwares. Okay, so the main intention of open source softwares is to help the communities, the developing communities. Okay, Apache is one of the open source foundation. In the same way, we have Spring Source, it is also open source foundation. Jakarta, it is a open source foundation. Like we have several open source foundations, but Apache open source is the biggest among them. It has several servers, libraries, and all. Okay, Tomcat is being developed by Apache Foundation, and we can go to the Apache site and download this Tomcat version, any of the version of Tomcat. The latest version is 7.x, but we are as we don't have 7.x, we use currently 6.x. Okay, and we have a directory structure downloaded. Directly we will use the directory structure itself. Okay, and if you want to download it, we can directly download it from Apache Foundation side. Okay, and once we have downloaded our Tomcat, okay, what are the prerequisites that we need to do? Okay, the first thing is the first prerequisite that we need to do is install Java software. Okay, for Tomcat 5.x, we should have a minimum of JDK 1.5 software. For Tomcat 6.x and above, JDK 1.6 is minimum. So, if you based on the Tomcat version that we are using, we should install the specific JDK software, and we should update the path in the environmental variables. Then only we can make use of that Tomcat software. Just because why we should install the JDK software in order to make use of Tomcat means Tomcat is a server which is built in Java. Okay, like Eclipse, even Tomcat is also built in Java. So, if you want to if you are executing a Tomcat server means internally we are executing a Java application. So in order to execute a Java application, we should have a Java software. So Tomcat is a server which is built in Java. So there should be Java software installed in our machine. There should be a compatible Java version. Sorry, compatible Java software. Okay, or compatible JDK version. Okay, installed in our machine, so that then only we can use this Tomcat server. So currently we are using Tomcat 6.x, so we have installed JDK. Earlier we had JDK 1.5, so we have installed JDK 1.6 just because we are using Tomcat 6.x. Okay, so we did not do anything to install 6.x directly. What we do is we have downloaded it from internet, just copy it and pasted the Tomcat 6.x. Okay, it's a direct download file. Just we can download it from the internet from Apache, and directly we can paste in some of the drives and unzip that. That's it. Okay, this is the root folder of the Tomcat server. Okay, the bin contains the binary files. Okay, the binary files to start or stop the Tomcat server. Okay, and this Tomcat 6.exe. Okay, sorry, this is a bad file, and using this we can start the Tomcat server. This bin folder contains all the binary files which are required to start or stop the Tomcat server. Okay, and conf means its configuration. Okay, conf means configuration. So Tomcat will provide some default properties. But we can modify the default properties of Tomcat server. Tomcat server by default will provide some default properties. Okay, and we can modify the default properties of the Tomcat server. How we can modify the default properties of the Tomcat server means using the configuration files that are in the conf folder. Okay, in the conf folder there are several files, XML files and all. We will discuss one by one later on, but the main thing is the server.xml. Okay, if you open the server.xml, there are several configurations present in the server.xml, but for a layman, like as we are discussing the server for the first time, okay, the main thing for us is the port number. Okay, just there is a connector port. Okay, we use this connector port to interact to specify the port number that we are using for Tomcat server. Okay, there might be any number of servers installed in our machine. There might be hundreds of servers installed in our machine, in our CPU. But how we can uniquely represent a server in our machine means we cannot represent a server uniquely through its name. Just because if it is Oracle, I may install Oracle 5 times. Or let's consider like Tomcat server. I have installed Tomcat 4.4, 5.4, 6.4, 7.4, and 8.4. Okay, but if I use Tomcat as my representation, let's consider like if I use name Tomcat as my representation to uniquely identify the server, but the same Tomcat can be installed in multiple folders with multiple multiple versions. So the unique representation of any server in install any machine is the port number. No two servers should have the same port number. Okay. We should take care in such a way that no two servers should have the same port number. Okay, if Oracle server has one port number, SQL server has another port number, Tomcat should have another port number, WebSphere should have another port number, like that. Okay, if there are there are 100 servers installed in our machine, then each and every server should have its own port number. Okay, so we can configure the Tomcat port number here. Okay, connector port equal to something. Okay, earlier it is 5050. If we want to change, we can change it. Okay, to 6060. Okay, and by default, when it comes from the Tomcat, when we download it from Apache side, the default port number is 8080. But what happens is, even for Oracle also, the default port number might be of installation might be 8080 for some of the servers. For many of the servers, the default port number is 8080. Okay, so what we do is we will change it to a required port number, a specific port number. Okay, and there are several configurations that we can make in server.xml. We'll discuss later on. Okay, and we can manage the users of the Tomcat server. Let's consider like if there is a server, each and every server will have some set of privileges. Let's consider like there is administrator, super administrator. Okay, and each and every user will have a role, and each and every role will be given some privileges. So that user role and privilege management can be done using this Tomcat users.xml. So if there is a server, let's consider like Tomcat server is being used for managing the transactions in SBA. So not all the users will be given the same privilege. The super admin will have some privileges. Admin will have some less privileges. The normal user will have some less privileges. So based on his role, based on the role of the user, they will be given specific privileges. Okay, and we'll discuss this context of XML while discussing about database interactions in web applications, how they will be used and all. Okay, and the lib folder contains all the supporting jar files. Okay, which is used by the Tomcat server. We are developing a web applications. Okay, and the web applications requires some of the supporting jar files. Okay. All the supporting jar files will be present in the lib folder. Okay, and whenever we do some actions in the Tomcat server using this server, the log will be produced in the log folder. Okay, the logs will be produced in the logs folder. Whenever we perform some action, the logs will be produced in the logs folder. And some temporary internet files will be there in the temp folder. Okay, this is not that much important. And the web apps contains the actual web applications. Okay, the actual web applications that we develop will be residing in this web apps folder. Okay, that we'll see later. Okay, and work will contain some auto-generated files that we'll discuss later on while discussing the PHP. But the main folders that we need to concentrate is bin, conf, lib, even log sometimes, and web apps. Okay, bin has the binary files, exe files. conf has configuration files where we can modify the structure or we can modify the usage of Tomcat server. Lib has the lib has the libraries, supporting libraries used by the Tomcat server, and logs will have the logs. Web apps will have the web applications. Okay, there will be some default web applications. Okay, like examples, post manager and all. We'll not be bothering about them, but we'll be developing a new web application for us. Whatever the web applications that we use, we should develop them in web apps. Let me develop a new web application which is named as Hello F1 app. Okay, and in this web application, okay, web apps will contain any number of web applications. Okay, in this web application, okay, will have a number of web resources. See, a web server like Tomcat like Tomcat will contain any number of web applications, and each and every web application will have, okay, any number of web resources. Okay, let's consider like there is one web application. Okay, that web application may contain n number of web resources. Okay, multiple web resources will group together to make a web application. Multiple web application can exist in a web server. Okay, so Tomcat server is there. In this Tomcat server, these are multiple web applications like Hello app. Okay, examples, post manager, root. These are multiple web applications present in the same web server, and the same web application may contain any number of web resources. Multiple web resources are gathered together to make a web application. Okay, and these web resources are of two types: static web resource and dynamic web resource. Web resources are of two types: static web resource and dynamic web resource. Static web resource and dynamic web resource. Static web resources are the web resources which will not change at the runtime. Static web resource is a web resource which will not change at the runtime. But dynamic web resource is a web resource whose content will change at the runtime. Static web resource is a web resource whose content will not change at the runtime. But dynamic web resource is a web resource whose content will change at the runtime. The best example for static web resource is HTML. HTML is a static web resource. Okay. And examples for dynamic web resources using Java technology are Servlet, JSP. Okay. So if you use Servlet and JSP as a web resource, then we can make our web application dynamic. If you use only HTML, then that will be a static application. Okay, that content will not change at the runtime. Okay, let's consider like we have Gmail. Will Gmail content change at the runtime? Yes or no? Yes, just because if I log into Gmail, my mails will come. If you log into Gmail, some X log into Gmail, X content will come, X mails will come. Okay, if some Y log into Gmail, Y content will come. So that side, Gmail application is a dynamic application. dynamic web application. Okay, so in order to develop dynamic web applications, we should use in Java. We should use servlets and JSP. And in order to make this process of dynamic web application development easy, okay, there are several frameworks like uh, struts, spring, JSF. Okay, whatever the dynamic web resources that we use, okay, whatever the mode of development it might be, either we use JSP or struts or spring or JSF, whatever the mode of development it might be, internally they use servlets only. Okay, what JSPs or struts or spring or JSF will do means they will ease the process of development. Okay, rather than we writing some hundreds of steps, they have already written the steps, we can reuse them. That's it. Okay, this strut, spring, and JSF, these are frameworks that we will be discussing later on. Okay, when required. Okay, but the basic thing is we have static web resources and dynamic web resources. Static web resources content will not change at the runtime, but for dynamic it will change at the runtime. Okay, let's develop some basic applications using static web resources like HTML. Then after we'll see how we can develop, okay, dynamic web applications. Then let's develop a simple application, a simple web application which uses HTML, a static web resource. So I have created if you want to develop a web application in a Tomcat server, what we should do is we should go to the web apps folder. We should go to the web apps folder, okay, and we should create a new folder with the name of the web application. Now our hello app is the name of the web application. Okay, hello app is the name of the web application. Okay, so we'll create one folder hello app and we'll create another folder with the name. The name should be web-inf. The folder name should be web-inf. So we have created in a Tomcat server. Okay, now web server is, if you want to develop a tree structure like this, Tomcat is a web server where what we have done, we have created a new web application with the name, we have created a new application with the name hello app. Okay, in this hello app we are going to develop several web resources. Okay, and in hello app we have web-inf. There it is.
So for any application, web-inf is the command.
For any web application, web-inf should be there. We'll discuss that. Okay, so for any web application, first there should be web-inf. Inside web-inf, okay, there should be an XML file. Okay, with the name in the web-inf folder, in the web application folder, we should have web-inf. In the web-inf folder, where it is? E, right? Hello app, web-inf. In web-inf folder, there should be a file with the name web.xml. Okay, in double quotes we should get web.xml, otherwise XML will be considered as a part of the name of the file. Okay, in the web.xml we should have hello-app. This is it. Already we have discussed about XML. Each and every Sorry, it's not hello FNFP. Web FNFP. Sorry. Okay. Already we have discussed XML. In XML we will get, okay, what is a root tag, a child tag, and all. Okay. Then the root tag for web.xml is web-app. Okay. So we should have a, let me come once again. We should have a Tomcat server. In web apps folder we'll create a web application, okay, a folder with the name of the web application. And again in web-inf, okay, this web-inf should be in uppercase, it should not be in lowercase, it should be in uppercase, web-inf. Okay, inside this folder we'll create a backup file. Let me delete this. Delete plus if you want to remove backup files, just go for window, sorry, tools, preferences, just click on these files, just remove this backup files. Okay, so now backup file will not be created. So in this web-inf we have web.xml. Okay, now whatever the static web resources that we have, all the static web resources should be parallel to web-inf. So here we will develop a HTML file. Okay, one of the static web resources is HTML, so we will develop a HTML file. Hello app, parallel to web-inf we are developing a HTML file with the name test.html. Okay, so I have developed a HTML file with the name test.html. So we have a web resource with us. The content of the web resource is hello. Okay, so we have developed a web application, okay, hello FN app with web-inf with a static web resource test, and in web-inf we have web.xml. Okay, now once we have a web application in a web server, okay, let's consider like I have developed some Java, core Java application, okay, and I have a dot class file with me. Okay, then how I can execute that? If I have a dot class file with me, how I can execute that? Java what shell?
By after comparing with Java's command, we will run Java command.
Java command, Java space
The path.
the class name, not the path.
Class.
Okay, so by using some mean we'll execute the Java application, some standalone application. The same way how we can execute a web application means, in order to execute any web application using any technology, we should have a browser, web browser with us. So multiple browsers are available in the market like Firefox, Internet Explorer, Chrome, Opera. Likewise, we have multiple browsers available in the market. So currently I am using this Firefox. What we'll do is, we should give this we should give something which executes our application. Okay, which executes our application. But how? What is the format that we need to give? What we'll give here? Okay, what we'll give here is the URI. What is URI, Shinu? Inform resource identifier. Okay, URI is inform resource identifier. So in order to identify our web resource, there should be some URI, but that URI will have a specific syntax. Okay, the syntax of URI is http colon. Okay, http is the protocol that we use. Okay, the protocol specifies our mode of interaction with the server. Okay, the protocol that we use is now HTTP. There are several protocols available, but the mostly used 99.99% used protocol is HTTP. Okay, what is HTTP? Hypertext transfer protocol. Okay, so the protocols will specify how the client will interact with the server, how the client is going to interact with the server. Okay, syntax is the protocol name colon 2 4 slashes. Okay, the IP address of the system. Okay, since the Tomcat server, this IP address of the system means not the system where browser is installed. It is the system where the server is installed. So, since the Tomcat server is installed here locally, we can give either localhost or the IP address of the system. Let's consider like what's the IP address of the system. Where it is. Why usually have a net connection for IP? Where it is? Where it is? Why it is not displaying my IP address? I'm not sure, but leave it. We didn't put it. Let's consider the IP address is 10.20.3.123. Is my IP address. So we can give either localhost or the IP address of the machine where Tomcat server is installed, or where the Tomcat server is located. Okay, colon the port number. Okay, what is the port number that we have used here? What is the port number? What we have configured here? 6060. This is the port number that we have used. So we'll give this port number. So where it is? This is our content. So let me paste it in some other file. So 6060 slash the name of the web application. What's the name of the web application here? Hello-app. This is the name of the web application. Slash the web resource. What is the web resource here? In this web application, what is the web resource that we have? Test.html. So test.html. Test.html. We can give either way using the localhost or port number. If the server is installed in the same machine, if the server is installed in some other machine, then we should give the port number. There is no other option. If the server is installed in the same machine, either we can give port number or we can give localhost. Sorry, either we can give IP address or localhost. Port number is mandatory. It will not change. No. Okay, review this. We started the server. I think I have not started the server. Let me start the server. If you want to start the server, you should go for bin JDK. You should go for bin can start the server. Okay, once I start the server, I'll go to the browser. Okay, and I execute the application. And so if we change any content in the HTML page, okay, now is it reflected on a refresh?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, the HTML page content, okay, will be refreshed on a, will be uh, changed, or the content that is displayed in the browser can be changed, okay, on a browser refresh. Okay, if you change the content of HTML and if you want to get it reflected, okay, just we need to refresh the browser. We need not to restore the server just because we have changed the HTML content. Okay, just change the HTML. If you want to change the HTML content, if you want, and if you want to see it effect on the browser, just we need to refresh. That's it. Okay, and the pattern of the URL will be like this. Okay, as we had discussed earlier, HTTP colon. Okay, HTTP is the protocol. So protocol colon 2 forward slashes. Okay, the IP address of the system. IP address colon port number slash web application name slash web resource. Okay, this is a standard URL for any web application using any web server. Okay, now let's consider like if I am going for a Gmail website or a Google website. Okay, do I give this? Do I give a website address something like this? Do I give a website address like this, like http colon forward slash 10 dot 20 dot 7 dot 88 slash google slash do I give something like this?
No. Some domain name.
Something we will not give like this. Basically, we will not give like this. But whatever the URL that we have seen, okay, the server will accept the URL only in this format. Server will accept the URL only in this format. Okay, but we won't give this format when we go for websites. If we go for website, we'll give www.facebook.com, www.something gmail.com or google.com. Just we give some names, but how the URL is generated, okay, those names are called as domain names. The backend URL will be like this only, HTTP or whatever the protocol may be, protocol colon 2 forward slashes IP address colon port number slash web application name slash web resource name. This is the standard URI for any web application. But most of the web applications that we use in real-time scenarios will not have this URL path. Okay, what we will give is http colon 2 forward slashes www.google.com, something like this. We'll give this name. But how this Google is, let's consider like this is the backend URL or this is the URL for Google homepage. How this URL or how this name is correlated with that backend URL means there will be some domains, internet domains, okay, and each and when we uh, buy some domain space, okay, they'll give you some space where you can store your data of your websites. Okay, where your website information will be there in the domain. So those providers will map your URL with your domain name. Those domain providers will map them. Will give you backend URL and just they'll map that backend URL with their front end name. This that we call as a domain name. Okay, and this domain name cannot be recognized by the server. Server can recognize a URL which is in the above form, in the highlighted format. So the domain name will be converted into the corresponding URL, corresponding backend URL by the domain providers. Okay, so it will be like that. Okay, and most probably the backend URL will be like this. Okay, so this URL will hit the server. This domain name cannot be recognized by the server. Server will recognize only this URL. Okay, and this URL will hit the server, and server will give some response. From where will hit the server means from browser, and from where the response will be displayed means again the response will be displayed in the browser itself. From browser will send some information, and the respective response will be displayed back in the browser. So the browser is the client. Okay, and we from the browser as a user we interact with the server. This is the main fund of any web application. Browser will be there. From browser we will send some information that we call as a request, and when we request for some information, the response will come back to the browser from the server. This is the fund of any web application. We send some request from the browser. Based on the request, the web application will do some business logic, and it will give some response back to the browser. Let's consider like I have a hall ticket. I will give some hall ticket. Click on search. My marks will be displayed. Displaying my marks will be a HTML logic. But what marks should be displayed? What is the marks? What is my marks in science? What is my marks in mathematics? Okay. How the information will be fetched means it will be some logic in the server, logic in the web application that we develop. Understand how the web application should be? And if you want to change the content of the static web resource, just change the content and refresh the browser. That's it. Okay, those content will be reflected. In order to execute a static web resource, okay, through a web application, okay, what we should have is we should have a webiner folder in the web application, and in the webiner we should have, this is the web application. In the web application we should have webiner. In the webiner we should have web.xml. Okay, and if this webiner folder and web.xml is there, then only that application is said to be a web application. If this webiner folder and web.xml are not there, then that application is not said to be a web application. Okay, but through the browser we are not accessing anything, or we are not accessing webiner folder or web.xml. But from the browser, if we access any application in a web server, the first thing it will do is it will look for webiner and web.xml, and in the web.xml there will be a web app tag. In web.xml there will be a tag with the name web app. Okay, this is the starting tag and this is the ending tag. Okay, so this hello, in the hello we have webiner. Inside webiner we have XML file with the name web.xml. Okay, we cannot qualify, or any web server cannot qualify an application as a web application until this webiner and web.xml is there. So a application is not qualified as a web application until webiner and web.xml is there. If webiner and web.xml is not there, then that application is not qualified as a web application. That will not be recognized as a web application by the web server. A web server can recognize an application as a web application only when it contains a webiner folder, and in webiner folder there should be web.xml and inside web.xml there should be web tag. Okay, so this webinf folder and web.xml is called as a deployment descriptor. Webinf folder and web.xml, this combination is called as a deployment descriptor. The webinf folder and web.xml is called as a deployment descriptor. Deployment descriptor. What is deployment descriptor in web application? It is this combination is called as a deployment descriptor. What is deployment descriptor means? The mandatory files and directories, okay, that make an application as a web application are called as deployment descriptors. Mandatory files and folders that are required or that make an application as a web application, that qualify as a that qualify an application as a web application are called as deployment descriptors. In a web application, the deployment descriptor or webinf folder. Inside webinf folder we should have -inf. We should have a web.xml file, and inside web.xml we should have web app tag. Okay, but if something is missing, let's consider like web app tag is not there. Web.xml is there, but web app tag is not there. Okay, so and one more thing, if we change anything in the webinf, if we want to get it reflected, then we should restart the server. Inside webinf, if we change anything and if you want to get it reflected, we should restart the server. So I have cleared this. So normally when the server is started, no exception happens, but there is some exception here. Okay, there is some exception here. Okay, so and if we try to execute this, it's giving 404 exception. Okay, now let me place this back. Let me place this web.xml back. Okay, and let me restart the server. So whenever there is an exception, we should restart the server. Sorry, whenever there is a change in webinf, we should restart the server. Now, is there an exception while starting the Tomcat server? Earlier there was an exception. Okay, when we compare this with this, earlier there was an exception while starting the server. This is a stack trace of the exception. Okay, but now there is no exception. It started successfully. Okay, now if I try to refresh the browser, it's coming perfect. So web app tag is mandatory. Okay, even physically directly we are not using this web.xml, webinf and web app tag directly from the browser. Okay, when we try to access a web application in a server, okay, first the control will come to webinf and web.xml only. Okay, so these are mandatory. Webinf and web.xml are mandatory to access any web resource from the browser. Okay, so these are called as deployment descriptors. Okay, now if I remove this webinf folder from here, okay, even in this situation it will give the same 404 exception. Okay, let me remove this web app tag and let me restart the server. Let me clear and let me start the server. It gives some exception. Okay, now again if I try to, when the web tag is not there, it gives 404 exception. Okay, so any output or any message that comes from Tomcat server, okay, will be in the form of codes, okay, error codes. Okay, we have 200 series, 300 series, 400 series, 500 series. Okay, if the code or if the response code is of 200 series, okay, then it's a successful response. Okay, if the response is of 300 series, 301 or 302 like that, okay, it's with warnings. Execution is successful, but execution is completed with warnings. Okay, if it is a 400 series, okay, then it is a client side error. Or it might be a client side error or error in interacting with the server. Okay, 500 errors are purely server side errors. Okay, these are the response codes that the Tomcat server will give us. Okay, if it is 200, then it is a successful execution. 300 series means execution will be successful, but there will be some warnings. 400 series means there will be error in the client side or the interaction of the client with the server. 500 series means it's a purely server side error. Okay, that we'll see how and when these errors will occur. Okay, then this 404 exception will come when the resource is not available. Okay, when the 404 exception is occurred, it might be of two reasons. Okay, it might be of two reasons. Where it is? It might be of two reasons. The first reason is, okay, the web.xml, in web.xml there might be some problem. Okay, some tags are missing. Okay, or some web app tag is not there, or some problem. Some problem might be there in the web.xml. Okay, in many of the cases, there is 404 exception means there might be a problem in web.xml. Now it got solved, and if you refresh the browser, okay, and the second reason for 404 exception is if we try to request a resource that is not available, okay, then I'll go for some resource which is hcu.html which is not available. Give you 404 exception. So basic reason for 404 exception is resource is not available. Okay, if the resource is not available, if the web resource that we are trying to access is not available in that web application, then it will raise a 404 exception. Okay, when a 404 exception is raised means when the web resource that we are trying to access is not available in the web application. Okay, then 404 exception will be raised. Okay. And so this is about how a web application can be developed, a simple web application can be developed, and how it can be accessed, and what are the problems that we may get. Okay, so as we are developing web applications currently using a static web resource HTML, we'll discuss few basics of HTML. Okay, we will not be discussing it in an extended way. We'll discuss the things that are required for developing a web application. Okay, so basically HTML is a markup language, as we have already discussed about XML. Okay, HTML is also a markup language like XML, and HTML can be information present in the HTML can be rendered by any of the standard browser. Okay, so HTML is a markup language. HTML is a markup language. As we told earlier, why a markup language is required means to group the data into multiple sections. Okay, if you want to group the data into or if you want to organize the data into multiple sections, okay, we use markup languages like XML and HTML. HTML is a markup language which will be rendered by the browser. Okay, and the root tag for any HTML page is HTML, and HTML is case insensitive. Okay, uppercase and lowercase are the same, but XML is case sensitive. HTML is case insensitive. Uppercase and lowercase are considered to be the same. Okay, and the root tag for HTML is HTML. The root tag of HTML is HTML, and we'll have a head, each and every starting tag will have the corresponding ending tag, same like XML, and we have a body. Okay, and the head portion will write scripting and styling. In the same way like XML, comments will be written in this format. Comments will be written in this format. Okay, and here we write actual HTML components. We write actual HTML components. The scripting and styling will be done in the head portion, like scripting using JavaScript or jQuery or whatever technology. We'll discuss them after discussing the web applications. Okay, scripting and styling will be done. Styling will be done using CSS, cascading style sheets. Okay, and scripting will be done by normal JavaScript or some scripting frameworks like jQuery or EXTJS and all. Okay, we'll discuss them later on, but make it a note like head portion will be specific for scripting and styling elements. Okay, but the actual HTML components will be written in the body portion. Sorry, not here, in the body portion. Actual HTML components will be written in the body portion. Okay, the body portion will write actual HTML components. Just let me have this test.html. Okay, when I refresh the browser, I go inside the HTML body. Okay, so we can apply any styles. Okay, like B is for bold. Each and every starting style should have a ending tag. Okay, so now it is bold. And try to refresh the browser, it will become bold. The same way, we can apply any of the styles, bold, italic, and all. Okay, and if you want to change the color, we can change it. each and every starting tag should have a ending tag. As I told, HTML is case insensitive, uppercase and lowercase are the same. HTML tags are case insensitive. So now the font color is green and it is bold. So, okay, so that we can apply some styles the UI component. Okay, and yeah, it's not the main thing that we're going to discuss. There are several HTML components that we have. Okay, and all the HTML elements. Okay, all the HTML elements that we are going to interact will be there in a form. All the HTML components that we are going to interact will be there in most probably will be there in a form. Okay, form action equal to form will have three attributes: name, action, method. Okay, name, action, method. Let's consider like we have a Gmail login page where we give username, password, and we click on submit. When we click on submit, the request will be sent to the server, and on the server what happens, some business logic will be executed, and then if it is successful login, then it will come to our home page where our mails are displayed. If the username or password are invalid, I can come back to the same page by displaying some error message. Okay, so it is a dynamic web application, but here it is a static web application. Okay, HTML is a static web application. So what name is a unique name of this form. There might be hundreds of forms in the same web page. Okay, and each and every form will be uniquely identified by its name. So name is unique for a form. Okay, and action will specify, okay, when this form is submitted, where the control should go. Okay, that destination will be specified in the action. Okay, so just I am telling that go to hello.html. Okay, there are different methods of form submission. At present, keep the get. Okay, we will discuss this get and all the method of form submission later on. It's not important now. Okay, we'll discuss this later on. Okay, and see, this is my simple form. Okay, in form we can write any HTML component. Okay, so if you want to send the value to the server side, okay, we can develop a HTML component even outside the form. But if you want to send the value of the HTML components to the server side, okay, definitely that should be in a form. Okay, so let me have a text field. Okay, the text field can be written in this format: input type equal to text. Name means name of the text field. Username. Okay, we can provide some default value. This is the default value. Okay, and we can end like this. The same like HTML. Just this is the label for the HTML field. Okay, in the same way the password also. If I don't give any value, no default value will be there. Okay, and if you want to have a submit button, then we should go for input type equal to submit. The label on the button, value will give the label on the button. Click here to submit. So it should be properly ended. Now this is my HTML page with head portion, body portion. In the body I have form. In the form I have one username field, one password field, and a submit button. Okay, so let me refresh this page. Okay, so username field is there with the default value RRR, and password field is there which is defaulted to empty, and click here to submit. Okay, now let me arrange this in a better way. I don't give any default value. Okay, so if I try to type some password is displayed in the browser. Will it be the case for normal websites? Will password display in the browser? No. So for that what we need to do is, for password fields the type should be password. So if the type is password, then what happens is, if we type any content, it will normally display in the browser. Okay, now all those are in the same line. Okay, username, password, and button are in the same line. Okay, if you want to put some breaks in the lines so that each and every element displays in a new line, what we need to do is, we should have a break. Break can be applied like this. Okay, br tag. For each and every purpose we have a specific tag in HTML. Okay, so username one break so that it will come in the next line, password another break, and then so username, password, and submit button. Okay, this is the login form. Some the interviewers will be asking like, please develop a login form for me. Okay, this is my login form. Okay, now I have a login form, and when I try to enter username and password, when I try to enter username and password, try to enter a username and password and submit, and I click on submit. What's telling? 404 exception. Why it is giving a 404 exception? Which resource is not available? Is not available. Okay, so what it is doing, it's coming to this form successfully. It's coming here successfully. when we try to enter username and password, okay, and when I click on submit, okay, it's going to hello.html successfully, okay, but what's happening here is that hello.html is not available, okay. Let me try to develop hello.html.
Where we are redirecting to hello.html.
That I'll show you. HTML, head, body, yes, go to hello.html, where inside hello app. No, there is a hello.html parallel to test.html, okay. Now let me try to get it once again. Let me try to access test.html. Let me enter username and password. Let me try to submit. So is it coming to hello.html? Okay, then how we, let's consider like there is a web page for us, okay, and there is a form with username and password and submit. Then when I click on submit, okay, it is going to the destination hello.html. But how we can configure the destination in test.html? Where we are doing that? Where we have done that? I told you just now, right?
In the login form.
In the form itself, okay, there will be an attribute named action. Okay, in the action we will specify the destination. We will specify the target to which we need to send the request. Okay, this is the target for us. Hello.html is the target for us. The target might be any web resource, static web resource or any dynamic web resource also. Okay, but the target of the form submission will be specified in the action. Okay, like that. Okay, and the method of form submission. Okay, there are several methods, okay, of form submission, but the majorly used methods are get and post. Mainly used methods are get and post. These are the methods of form submission. Okay, get and post. Now, just observe the URL that is generated. Okay, now the default value of form submission is get. Okay, the default value for method in form submission is get. Okay, if you don't give any method, then the default is get. If you don't give any method, then the default is get. So now the default value is get. And let me try to refresh the browser. Let me try to refresh the browser and give username and give password and submit. So how it is? How is the URL same or is it changed at the runtime?
No, it's changed. Username is changed.
So how it happens is the URL is like this. Application slash the target.html slash, okay, the target.html, this is the application, Okay, the web application path, and this is the target, question mark, username equal to something, ampersand, password equal to something. Okay, this is the URL that we have. But what is this? Whatever the information that we populate in the HTML components, that information will go as that information will go to the target, okay, in the form of the URL, which is appended to the URL. Okay, this information that is appended to the URL when method is get is called as a query string. This URL will be this query string. The highlighted portion is called as a query string. Okay, the query string will be appended to the URL. Okay, only when the method of form submission is get. Okay, and the query string format will be like this. The query string and the actual URL will be separated by a question mark. Question mark, URL, question mark, URL, question mark. Okay, the query string. Okay, URL, question mark, query string. So the query string will contain internally, okay, the request parameters. Okay, whatever the information that we send from the browser to the server will go in the form of a request parameter. Now in this web page we have two fields. Whatever the information that we populate in two fields, username and password, and we click on submit. These are the values that we populate, and these values go to the server side in the form of a request parameter. So when we click on submit, these values will go into in the form of a request parameter, and request parameters will go to the target. Okay, from the client, the request parameters will go to the target. Okay, in the form of a query string. If the method is get, if the method of form submission is get, then the request parameters will go to the server in form of a query string. Okay, and the query string format will be URL, and the query string and the actual URL will be separated by or delimited by question mark. Okay, URL question mark query string. So that means parameter 1 equal to value 1 ampersand, parameter 2 equal to value 2, like that. If we have 10 parameters, okay, all those parameters in the query string will be separated by a ampersand. It will be like a parameter value pair. Parameter 1 equal to value 1 ampersand, parameter 2 equal to value 2 ampersand, parameter 3 equal to value 3. In the same way, username equal to something ampersand, password equal to something. So this will be like a query string. Then this query string will be automatically generated, okay, if the method of form submission is get. Okay. Now let me do the same thing with method as post. Default method is get, and let me do the same thing with method as post. Okay, so let me try to go back to the same page, test.html. Let me go back to the same page. Let me refresh the page, and let me give some values and click on submit. So is it reaching the destination?
Yes.
It is reaching the destination, but are the request parameters available in the query string?
No.
No.
Only target.
Okay, request parameters are not available in the query string. So request parameters will not be available in the query string if you go for method is post. No. Understood the basic difference? This is the basic difference between get and post. Okay, so when we use get and when we use post, means name itself specifies. We use method is equal to get when we are getting the information from the server. Okay, let's consider like if you go for username and password. Okay, or let's consider like I am providing my roll number, and based on the roll number I am getting all my marks. Then what I am doing is uh, I'm getting the information from the server. So in that case, okay, I'll go for the method get. So the primary intention is to get more data from the server. Then we go for method is get. When we are posting the information to the server, let's consider like if we go for monster registration site, we'll have huge and huge load of data that we send to the server. When we click on submit from the monster site, what will happen? At least 20 to 30 field data will be saved, will be sent to the server side. Okay, if you go for Naukri and monster. So what happens is we send huge data to the server side. In that case, when we post huge data to the server, okay, then we use the method as post. Okay, when we get some huge data from the server, we use the method as get. Let's consider like I'll give my roll number, and based on the roll number, my details should come, my marks should come. Then what I'll do is, in that case, I'll use method as get only. Okay, and method is, when we use method is get means when we get the information from the server. When we use the method post means when we post the information to the server. Okay, then we use method as post. And if we use method as get, okay, what happens is the request parameters will go to the server as a query string. Okay, in the case of method get, the first thing is when we use method get means, okay, when server, when post is when then we use post. Okay, so when we try to fetch some information from the server, we use get. When we try to post some information to the server, we use post. Best example is when we try to get some details, when we try to get my marks based on my roll number, we use then we are fetching the information. Let's consider like we are going for Naukri or Monster and we are posting our details. Then we are posting the information. Okay, and when we use the method as get, okay, then request parameters will go as a query string. Request parameters will go to the server side as a query string, and when we go for method post, request parameters will go as a request body. Okay, the request parameters will go as a request body. Okay, now if you use method equal to get, okay, then we should not use that method get, okay, when we are posting some information to the server, just because get method will have some limitation. Okay, get method will have some limitation of for the data that we send to the server side. So we cannot transfer huge information to the server side with the method get. Okay, why we cannot send it means, just because if we, let's consider there are 100 parameters in my form, 100 input elements in my form. Okay, if I have 100 elements, where the 100 elements values, how the 100 element values will be transferred to the server in the query string. That means they will be appended to the URL. But what happens is, for many of the standard browsers or many of the standard servers, they will accept the query string, or they'll accept only a specified URL length. They cannot accept some lakhs of characters in the URL. There will be some specified length for the URL. Okay, so for that reason, we cannot send huge data to the server with method equal to get. Just because they will go as a query string. Query string will be appended to the URL, but there will be limitation to the size of the URL for many standard browsers and standard servers. For that reason, we cannot send much information if we use method equal to get. Okay, and if we use method equal to post, since it is going, the request parameters are going as a request body, we can send information. There is no limit. There is no limit for the data that is sent to the server. Okay. And some of the interviewers will be asking, like, since we are getting the information from the server, we are not posting anything, why request parameters should be there in the get? Answer my question. See, get will be used to get information from the server. It will not post any information to the server. So, why we use request parameters means, if we want to send some data from the client to the server, we use request parameters. Then why request parameters are enabled for get? Why they can't be disabled? Answer my question? Yes. What is your assumption? Why it can't be disabled?
It's accessing the specific parameters in the target.
Hmm?
To that request parameters, the specified data is accessing in the target.
Okay. So, why request parameters are enabled for get means, if you want to get some information, we should give some minimal information. Let's consider, like, if I want to get the marks, okay, then I should give the roll number. So that is a minimal information that we send to the server side to get the information from the server. So to give that minimal information, request parameters are enabled even for method equal to get. Understand? So this is about method equal to get and post, and how the request how the request will go from the browser to the server means, the request will contain three parts: request header. Whenever we click on submit or do any action that goes to the server, a request header will be there, request line will be there, request body will be there. Okay, these are the three things that we have, okay, in a request. These are the three parts of a request. Whenever we click on submit or whatever the action that we do to navigate to another page, to another target, okay, the request will be generated, and the request will have three things: request header, request line, and request body. We'll discuss the request header later on. Okay, why request header is used means, to change the properties of the request. Okay, to change the properties of the request, like what should be the maximum buffer size or maximum URL size. Okay, to change the properties, or what is the language that we are using, like that. Okay, to change the properties of the request, okay, we use request headers. We will discuss about request headers later on. To change the properties of the request, we use request headers. Okay, the request line actually contains the request information. Okay, it contains method of form submission, okay, the URL, and it's first the protocol and version of the protocol, and version of the protocol, and then the URL, and then the method of form submission. So let's consider like it is a GET request. Let's consider like it is our request. Okay. So the protocol in general will be HTTP. Okay, of version 1.1. Okay, and then the URL that we have. What's the URL that we send? This is the URL, which is having a query string. And method of form submission is okay. So let's consider like request. Then request body will be empty. Request body will be empty in case of GET. Okay, but if the same request is submitted in the post, then request header will be there. Request header will be there. Request line will be there with the same, but the query string will not be there. Query string will not be there, but the method of form submission is post. Okay, and then the request body contains key value pairs of request parameters, like username equal to something, password equal to something, like this. The request body contains key value pairs of request parameters. Understood? How the data will be transferred from the client to the server when method equal to get and when method equal to post. Okay, that's how it will be. So when we use method equal to post, okay, the URL will not reflect that. URL will not reflect that. URL will not reflect the request parameters. But if you use method equal to get, the URL will have a query string appended which contains the request parameters and values. So which one do you think it is more secure?
Secure is post.
Post. So in many of the websites, post is used. In many of the banking websites, post is used, just because it will be more secure. Okay, like that it will be. So this is how the form submission will be. How get and post will be used. Less secure, but post is more secure.
How post is accessing the relevant information without showing these things, whereas in case of get method.
In case of get method, we the information is transferred in the query string or the URL.
Yes.
In case of post that we told, right, request body will be there. See, through for each and every request, request header will be there, request line will be there where the URL is there, and request body will be there. Through request body, the request parameters will be sent to the server. Okay, so request body will not be exposed to the browser, so it will be more secure. It will be another maintenance of server itself. So in case of method equal to get, the request parameters will be sent through request line. The request line contains the URL and the query string. Okay. In case of post, the request parameters will be sent to the server in the form of request body. Okay, and let's consider that I have a hyperlink. Okay, then to go for a hyperlink, what we'll do is we'll go for a tag anchor. We call this as a anchor tag. A is a anchor tag. href will specify the target. registration.html, or we'll give it as a sign up.html. Okay, this until then are you not registered? If you are not registered, click here to sign up. So that will be displayed as it is in the browser. Okay, this is how a URL will be appear. Okay, we can apply many styles to this URL. Okay, but the basic URL style will be like this. Okay, just if I click here, gives a for not for exception just because signup.html is still not available. Okay, let me develop that. Okay, HTML. Even if this is not mandatory, HTML head and not mandatory, make it a habit to put all this whenever the develop HTML or JS process. So I have developed a sign up page. Let me try to access the same resource again. So this coming. Okay, where we give the target for anchor means in the href. The href we give the target, and in the body we'll give the content that should be displayed in the anchor tag. So whatever the content that we give in the body of the anchor tag, that is displayed with a underline, as a hyperlink. This content is displayed as a hyperlink. Okay. And this is the basic HTML. There are several things in the HTML that we'll discuss later on. Okay.